Star Wars. Thanks to our masters and commanders at Disney, the ubiquity of Star Wars has never been more ubiquitous. That being said, there are entries in this never-ending saga that we would rather glaze over and pretend never happened entirely.
You are a Palpatine.
No, not that one. What I am referring to is none other than 2018's unforgettably forgettable Solo, a Star Wars story. But before we begin, I'd like to give a shout out to my friends on the How Star Wars Is It podcast, as I'm about to borrow one of their favorite quantifiers for how Star Wars something indeed is. Star Wars movies, prequels in particular, often answer questions no one was asking in the first place. And Solo has got those for us in spades, or whatever the cards are that they use in that game that is never explained. Solo is a fascinating movie that I've spent an obscene amount of time with, so you don't have to. Has it somehow won me over in a classic case of Stockholm Syndrome? Probably yes. Does that make it a good movie, or even a movie at all? Of course not. While it technically has a narrative structure, bringing our hero from scrum rat to scoundrel, Solo mostly functions as a reminder of many Star Wars things unrelated to Han Solo's origin. Presenting Solo, a Star Wars reference. And just to get this out of the way, I'm not going to be talking about the Solo name scene as it is stupid, frivolous, and there is really nothing to be said about it except that Disney Star Wars loves puns, I guess.
Be careful not to choke on your aspirations.
A few other things Disney Star Wars loves: portions, urchins, decoder rings, and fuel. And Solo is all about the fuel, baby. Coaxium.
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 Solo came to us at a time when the House of Mouse was flying high with their new favorite IP, with Rogue One, a Star Wars story, and The Last Jedi being back-to-back box office hits. At this point, Solo was to be a member of a proud fleet of Star Wars stories, but alas, we know this was not meant to be. Ever since The Force Awakens hit the big screen in 2015, Disney's approach to Star Wars has been quite clear. Cradling two sets of fandoms, the Star Wars fanboys and the casual crowd that loved the originals but didn't care for George Lucas's prequels, Disney carefully fed each child with reassuring notions of X-Wings, Millennium Falcons, and arguably the same movie they already know and love. To venture too far off course would be to court disaster. Thus, Solo, a prequel by any other name, finds itself in the awkward position of telling an origin story for young Han Solo while simultaneously making audiences nostalgic for Han Solo adventures that have yet to take place. Take this scene between Han Solo and his reunited childhood sweetheart Kira, for instance. Kira is afraid of getting close to Han because she has secrets, but Han is all like, "But I'm cool though," and then they eventually kiss, only to be interrupted by C-3PO. Wait, I must be thinking of another movie. Huh. Musically, this kind of thing happens as well in an attempt to pull on our heartstrings. To remind us of all the fun we had with the Millennium Falcon back in the day, composer John Powell riffs off of John Williams' classic score from the original films.
Okay.
The most baffling music callback, however, takes place within the first 15 minutes of Solo. While on the run from what is basically a giant worm version of Fagin from Oliver Twist, Han stumbles upon an ad to join the Empire. Curiously, in the background of this piece of Uncle Sam I Want You propaganda, we hear a rendition of John Williams' Imperial March.
Explore new worlds. Learn valuable skills. Bring order and unity to the galaxy.
Making it diegetic music. Music that is occurring within the film itself. This fact implies so much about the music in Star Wars movies. Do the characters hear the music we hear? Does this mean that Darth Vader is feeling himself while the Imperial March echoes off of the wall of the Star Destroyer deck? Is there an orchestra pit down there? Fascinating. In this way, Solo inadvertently betrays some of the internal logic of Star Wars for a quick fix of nostalgia or comedy. Take our introduction to Chewbacca. In addition to the thrilling explanation for why Chewbacca is referred to as Chewie,
I ain't saying that every time.
we see the moment where Han and Chewie first find common ground. Han speaks Wookiee, and we, as the audience, can read the subtitles and understand what he's saying, thus breaking the unspoken rule of Chewbacca. We never know what he's really saying, but by this logic, shouldn't we now be able to understand what Chewie says? Haven't we cracked the code? This is a one-way street of communication, people. Easter eggs permeate Solo, a Star Wars reference. Key among them is another Disney innovation, the dice. Initially a throwaway piece of set decoration that Chewbacca bumps his head on in the original film, Rian Johnson included these in The Last Jedi as an ode to George Lucas's American Graffiti, and turned these silly little things into a totem of Han Solo. American Graffiti star and Solo director Ron Howard took the idea of the dice and ran with it. What do they mean?
Luck.
Nothing, really. But hey, we sure do love seeing the dice. Here's a quick run-through of other Easter eggs that are reference movie references in no particular order. Han's trademark gun was kissed by Woody Harrelson. Ripping off arms.
Wookiees are known to do that.
Superiors killing underlings. Mining colonies. Space chest. Move along. Terrace Kasi. The Wookiee prisoner routine. We don't serve your kind here. And the fact that Lando's undercover outfit from Return of the Jedi is just something he's always had? Least surprising of all, Solo wants us to be nostalgic for everyone's favorite Corellian freighter, the Millennium Falcon, presented in all its magnificence in what is basically a dirty impound lot shot at dusk. Inspiring.
What a piece of junk!
Han has most definitely experienced lightspeed before, but when it's in the cockpit of the ship that he seems to be pre-nostalgic for, it's a regular fireworks display. Besides learning that the Falcon lost a tooth at some point, Solo essentially makes the Falcon a character herself in the form of Phoebe Waller-Bridge's L-337, who more or less becomes the Falcon's GPS by the end of the film.
She's part of the ship now.
Not only is the Falcon a lady, she's a woke lady who likes to make
I'm gonna flip your switch! Good luck finding it!
clitoris jokes. L3's circuit-based genitals are a big part of her character, actually. She has performance issues,
Can't perform with you looking at me.
and it's implied she has a very familiar relationship with Lando Calrissian.
Oh, my sacral occipital circuit is sticking. You're gonna have to do that thing again later.
Yeah.
Going so far as to suggest that they have been physically intimate.
How would that work?
It works.
That's right, folks. Solo, a Star Wars story, has made it canon that Lando has fucked the Millennium Falcon. You know, for the kids. Lando Calrissian, or Landonis, I guess, is synonymous with the cool of Billy D. Williams, perhaps even more so than Han Solo is with Harrison Ford. For the record, I think Alden Ehrenreich does a great job as Han Solo. He doesn't try to do an impression of Harrison Ford, but instead just plays the character of lovable scoundrel. Emilia Clarke does a fine job as Kira, playing coy, charming, yet threatening. In other words, Clarke and Ehrenreich are acting. And despite what you may remember about Donald Glover's performance, his Lando is basically only a Billy D. impression.
Fantastic. A wet bar. I'm definitely gonna have some words with someone about this.
Yes, it's fun to talk like this sometimes, I guess.
I don't like it. I don't agree with it.
Which brings us to what I say is the linchpin of the entire film. The game of Sabacc, where Lando and Han meet. The pinnacle of answering a question that no one has asked. Our lovable rogues are seated at a table surrounded by aliens who don't speak English and aren't given any subtitles because, let's face it, they don't matter, they're basically just set dressing. What follows is this whole tomato thing about the name of the game
Sabacc?
Sabacc.
Sabacc.
and the name of our protagonist.
Whoa, Han. That's Han.
That's the philosophy of the movie, right there. Going out of its way to justify a silly bit of continuity. Hey, why does Lando say Han like Han in that one movie?
It sounds like hen.
Excellent question. Here's a ham-fisted way to explain a bad line reading from Billy D. Williams. Come on, guys. It was the late 70s when Star Wars had yet to fully ubiquitize. And no one wanted to correct the guy on the Colt 45 commercials. End of story. Knowing Solo's habit for needless backstory, I'm genuinely surprised we didn't get to see Lando's little maneuver at the Battle of Tanab. What happened at Tanab, Lando? What is your maneuver? A curious B-plot addition to Solo worth noting is that of Enfys Nest and her marauders. Enfys, who is most definitely trying to elicit feelings of Boba Fett in that helmet, is presented as an antagonist but in the end turns out just to be a red herring and a child. In a mosque. The coaxium ends up in her possession, which she uses to finance the rebellion. So by giving the fuel to Enfys, Han Solo indirectly started the rebellion that he would later reluctantly join?
Hey, I knew that was more to you than money.
Sure, whatever. Which brings us to the conclusion of the movie. Kira kills Paul Bettany. Alright, he's in the movie too. He doesn't really do a whole lot. Tandy Newton's in there too, but she blows up, and there's a monkey guy voiced by Jon Favreau. They really don't matter to the plot, I'm sorry to say. What does Solo actually say about the character of Han Solo?
Watch this!
Watch what?
Han's arc in the original Star Wars was the typical reluctant hero, initially being more mercenary in personality, but ultimately revealing his good nature by saving the day. In Solo, Han unconvincingly tells Kira that I'm a terrible person, but Kira reassures Han that she's the only one in the galaxy who really knows who Han is. You're the good guy. Does this negate his character arc in A New Hope? Is this movie implying that the Mother of Dragons is Han's actual soulmate? Or is she just the Lana Lang to his Clark Kent? Not from Smallville. We'll never know, because this movie didn't make enough money to continue answering those kinds of questions, or tell us why Darth Maul feels the need to flex his lightsaber on a Zoom call. Or do a flashback story about Han's friend Needles, which is itself a reference to a character from the Back to the Future films.
Well, something I picked up from my pal Needles. Best street racer in all Corellia. Till he crashed. And died doing this.
I need to know more about Needles. He seems like a fun guy, but we'll never meet him. On the flip side, Solo addresses the nauseating topic that George Lucas has made us discuss since 1997. In Solo, Han shoots first, meaning that he's the good guy, but also sometimes not. The movie doesn't know. The movie doesn't care. The movie just wants you to be happy that our favorite best friends are sitting in their favorite chairs and our favorite music plays. In conclusion, it's all about the dice, baby. And that Lando fucked the Millennium Falcon. And that Needles is undeniably the best Star Wars character never created. R.I.P. Needles.